in hell.
And then
it
by the
says
time you get to
Onesimus
Christ,
is
obviously, like I
Paul
pointed out,
tells a
it
slave
says,
owner, take back
and Onesimus no longer as a
I
slave.
forgot all about it. Do you think I did it on purpose?
Like there's, I think you guys are just doing what the typical internet atheist does, and they cherry pick verses and not look at the entire Bible. Because I mean, I understand why.
Aren't the Jews an ethnic group?
Are they an ethnic group? Well, I don't know, because it says a mixed multitude came out of Egypt, and a mixed multitude, and you can't tell by looking at somebody what a Jew looks like. For example, there are Ethiopian Jews. There are Sephardic Jews. There are Ashkenazi Jews. Like if you think that Jews are just one people, you've got some research to do.
Well, back then they were an ethnic group.
No, it says in the Exodus when they came out of Egypt, it says a mixed multitude went out, and if you merely got converted into Judaism, you would become a Jew. Like for example, Ruth wasn't a Jew.
Okay, I mean, small.
I would also point out real quick that Jews were in the same region as the people around them in Egypt, so they would have all been the same color. Ethnic Jew just means you're an offspring or descendant of Abraham. That's all that really is. Also, my other point would be, hold on real quick. God met Abraham in his standards when he went to go make the covenant with him. Because that was the standard, was to tear apart an animal, put your hands in each other's hands, and walk through that animal to make a covenant. And also the other thing was, she pointed out Abraham telling God to go kill Isaac. Well, Abraham knew that God told him and promised him that his offspring would be through Isaac, so he knew that he would either have to bring Isaac back or it wasn't going to happen.
Right, and that was a foreshadowing of God giving his only son, Christ. So
yes, sir.
It just seems like it would be smart to tell every nation and every ethnic group about the God that he expects you to believe in.
As I said, he tried to deal with people before he chose Abraham to himself in the previous chapter, and they tried to build a temple to heaven. And so he split them all up, and in the very next chapter chose a single people to himself.
He also gave Sodom and Gomorrah a chance.
You're deriving meaning from this book. You're using your subjective reasoning to get to it because you have a moral standard.
No, I'm just reading it in chronological order.
No, because you're putting a bunch of things onto the verses that aren't clearly stated. So how you get there is by your reasoning because you want God to be a loving God.
Well, just name one.
We're the ones being objective because we're looking at this is giving you the laws for owning slaves. No, it's not a cherry pick.
Yeah.
It's
name
looking
one thing
exactly
that I'm doing
at what you're saying.
You're straight up a cherry pick.
No,
name one thing that I did.
I'm addressing things in the context.
So did we cherry pick?
Just name one thing I did.
That Ted Bundy didn't kill 12-year-olds, or are we cherry picking just because we're focusing on the one time he did, or the few times he did?
No, but obviously we disagree with what you're interpreting that to mean. And
it's not an interpretation when it literally says
like hermeneutics is. What is your hermeneutical approach to even interpret these passages? How do you how do you formulate the context of these passages?
When you purchase a Hebrew slave, he is to serve you for 6 years.
Okay. It's not Hebrew. I already told you. In the manuscript.
That's not even the part that we're contesting. The part that I'm objecting to is the word purchased.
Yeah, okay, just like you can purchase an NBA player, so what?
But we're referring to humans that we're purchasing.
Yeah, but I've already pointed out.
So you're the one attaching this extra meaning. How can you get to the fact that clearly God knew it was wrong? He was trying to ease them into it. You have no basis for saying that except for your interpretation.
You know what the socioeconomic system was back then? It was debt. They were buying people out of debt.
Right, so that's hold on. She asked a question. Brenda said she's backstage.
Okay, I'll bring her on. Let me answer the question though, because the question that was asked was, I am bringing my subjective opinion to say that God was easing them. What's up, Brenda? That God was easing them on, and that I am using my reasoning to bring that up. No, I went straight to what Christ said. Moses gave you the law because of the hardness of your heart, but it was not that way from the beginning, and I tell you the opposite. That's not me making it up. I'm deriving everything from Scripture. You guys don't have a solid hermeneutical approach.
So the reason I said facts don't care about your feelings is that, I mean, God should be saying that to us. If there's a society that loves enslaving and raping and stuff, I mean, he destroyed them previously. So I don't know why his standards of punishment.
That seems like it would apply.
So God should be saying facts don't care about your feelings. Slavery is wrong, you guys. He said that about Trump. Apparently, that's strong enough for him to change their minds on, but not slavery.
Yeah, but think about that argument and how it applies to you, though. If you go, well, God was wrong because he allowed slavery, that could simply say facts don't care about your feelings. Like, that's not a good argument. That's just a Ben Shapiro, like, throwaway phrase. It doesn't answer
if slavery is wrong.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, Brenda, we can hear you.
Okay, 'cause I need to test usually because
yeah, I understand.
The sound selector sometimes. Okay, I'm listening.
Okay. Yeah, Praise, did you want to make a point? I'm gonna go for maybe another 30 minutes. I'm gonna go, so it's starting to get a little late.
I forget the lady's name that was talking. Maybe that can Katie. Maybe if you can do a little research on this, look up debt servitude or indentured servitude. Maybe you'll learn something there.
That's slavery.
That's a form of slavery.
Right. It means you buy people's contracts. There's nothing foul. There's nothing
Can they leave?
immoral about that.
Can they leave?
No, it is immoral.
What about the children born into it?
There's nothing immoral about financial transactions. So it's a financial transaction.
Yeah, but you can beat them. You can beat them. So
where does it say you can beat them at?
It's just a simple. It says you can beat your slave. You just can't kill him. He can't die within a couple days.
It does not say that. It does
and
not
if it's
say that
just
at all.
yes, it does. And if
No,
it's just a simple purchase and a financial
Read
contract, then why can
the straw man the text?
No. I'm literally reading the text.
Read it then.
Why can Sarah give Hagar to her husband for her to rape and take her child?
So
why can Rachel do the same thing to Bilhah and Leah to Zilpah? Like,
okay, so let's say that
if it's just a if it's just a contract and it's just an exchange, when someone strikes his male or female slave with a rod so that the slave dies under his hand, that act shall certainly be avenged. If, however, the slave survives for a day or two, he is not to be punished, since the slave is his own property. Exodus 21, verse 20.
27. I mean, I just keep repeating myself over and over when I did a whole freaking stream on this. I just don't feel like going through all this again.
Okay. Maybe the slave issue. I'm sorry I came in late. I was watching another show. The title is Christian versus Secular Morality. Did you guys come to some sort of understanding regarding those?
You mean on the debate earlier or in this stream?
In this stream. Because the title of the YouTube channel says Christian versus secular morality.
Well, that was because this is an after show to that debate.
Okay.
But when we came on here, we kind of started talking about objective versus subjective morals, and Taylor claimed that he had an objective moral, but it was based on human reason, and so I just was pointing out that it wasn't objective.
Do you know what the difference is between objective and subjective?
Yes, we went over this. Objective.
I'd like to hear Brenda's take.
Well, objective is of course mind independent, right?
That's what I said. But then they said that I just made up that definition.
No, that's the philosophical definition.
No, that's not the position.
No, you're right. I'm sorry, but look up at the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. The difference between the objective subjective distinction is mind independent versus mind dependent. That's the distinction.
Yeah, that's what I said too. I agree with you.
Yeah.
So just because we can do things with our mind doesn't mean that some of those things aren't still true.
That's not the distinction. You're confusing the distinction again. So a good example would be Mount Everest is 26,000 feet above sea level. That's objective, because it's not my opinion that Mount Everest is 26,000 feet above sea level. It's an objective fact. My opinion is that Mount Everest is a beautiful, majestic mountain, but that's subjective because it depends on me, the subject, and my personal evaluation. Somebody else could think it's horrible because their friend died on the mountain, and they're sickened whenever they look at Mount Everest. So that would be subjective. That's the distinction to be made.
Yeah.
Right. And So I'm of the position there's no such thing as objective morality.
See, that's my whole point.
Contradictory.
Yeah, so that's my whole point is I agree from an atheistic world. See, because they kept saying, "Oh, you're saying so only from your worldview where there's God, there can be objective moral." That doesn't make sense. But I think a lot of atheists agree with me on it, like Brenda, for example.
Well, there are objective secular morals. I don't happen to agree with those.
Right.
But there are. There's no problem with philosophical positions who propose some kind of objective, ethical, metaphysical, ethical system.
Yeah. So
yeah,
that's all. That's all my
they
point was
exist.
earlier. You guys was just
Christianity is definitely a subjective moral system, though.
I do disagree with you, obviously, on that.
Yeah, maybe this Friday, Brandon, you'll change your mind. And Skylar's debate.
Yeah, Praise is actually debating Skylar on this on Friday.
Well, it's subjective because the moral system, the morals depend on a subject, God.
No, he's an object.
Mind of God.
Well, I'm an object too, but that doesn't mean that my evaluation of Mount Everest is objective. It's not independent of my mind. God's moral pronouncements are not independent of him.
Yeah, but we're not saying that they're right because he pronounced them. That's not the claim.
In virtue of
what? No, you
virtue,
kind of are, though, because you said he set the standard because he's the original and he created everything. So therefore it's standard and it's objective and it's just not.
Yeah. By what criteria? By what criteria does God base his morals on?
So are you talking about the Euthyphro dilemma, right?
Well, I'm just asking what criteria he uses to make moral judgments.
I thought Brendan believed in objective morality too, but I guess not.
Well, it can't be outside himself, or it wouldn't be God. So I mean, it's
his character.
So Brenda, here's how I explained it earlier. I said I used the Euthyphro dilemma to explain this. I said, does God command things because they're good, or are they good because God commanded them? And I said it's a false dilemma. The term good in those sentences are just what God is the good. And here's how I explain that is because if, according to our worldview, you have to critique our worldview from like an inner worldview critique, right? If God is all that exists before humans or anything else is created, God's all that there is, okay, then there is no other standard by which to judge morality. Now God creates something. Whatever God creates, he is the standard of everything to them. So, for example, if he created Mount Everest, it's objectively a mountain, sure, because you get what I mean? It's grounded in God. There is no ground outside of God.
Brenda should watch that debate tonight.
Yeah, I think so.
Because I answered the flood question.
So you're going on the base assumption that God exists and God created the universe. Well, I don't have that assumption.
No, I agree.
So how come I can't have think that there's an objective truth out there that's not created by God, that I can subjectively view and I can subjectively kind of measure and try to figure out? But still think that there's a good, I still think I have just as much right to say that there's an objective truth as you do, just because I don't claim a God.
Well, great question. So I don't say that atheists can't know things are more immoral.
That's not.
You said, why can't I know?
No, why can't I claim that there is a truth out there that I can be correct about or can be incorrect? So there can be an objective moral standard.
Because you have no standard or basis, respectfully. You have no standard or basis. No, I'm saying
there is a truth that exists. Humans try to subjectively get to it, but
how do you know God's a good standard?
The truth is there. I
don't know what it means. I don't know what it means to say truth exists. Truth is just a property of sentences. So sentences are either true or false. There's no such thing as a substance that has the property of being true. It's just sentences, and sentences are just in your head. So these are just.
Do you think that there is a right or wrong way to go about things?
No.
So I think that that there is. I just think that humans subjectively try to figure out what it is. But I think when it comes down
through
to
naturalistic means, yeah. You're not going to find it through naturalistic means, so good luck with that.
Okay, good luck with what you're doing. You can't find the objective truth either because you don't know the mind of God.
By definition, God is ontological, though. We have something that transcends reality. So yes, we have more justification for that.
You're just using big words that you heard.
I'm just using
the big words. Don't use the big words that you don't understand. Do you know what the word ontology means? Do you know what the word ontology means?
Yes, the nature or essence of something. What is.
So by definition, God exists. So by definition, God exists.
Yeah, I can use an ontological argument to validate
that. So by
that.
definition, I have a unicorn that exists. It exists by definition.
Well, if it has the same properties of God, then yeah, you're just equivocating the same.
It doesn't have the same properties as God.
The property is that it exists.
I have a unicorn.
Unicorns do exist. They're an animal with one horn.
Well, actually, if you guys look on my YouTube channel, I've pointed out on multiple occasions, atheists always bring up magic and unicorns and leprechauns way before theists ever do.
That's the same amount of evidence you have for your religion.
Well, you know,
theists are just talking about logic and so on, and then atheists always bring up leprechauns.
Well, people did believe in
leprechauns by definition, though. So you need something that is not
people
contingent.
Did believe in leprechauns.
Immanuel Kant brought this objection up a long time ago. Existence is not a predicate. So you can't use existence to define things into existence.
Yeah.
I would say because you don't start with the standard.
That was Taylor's point.
I would say because you don't start with the standard of God, you can't make sense of rationality, reasoning, or laws of logic that are abstract, immaterial in their nature.
You have to, or else you can't claim that's a good standard.
That's incredibly arrogant.
So,
we never said God's being.
Well, hold on. I want you guys to respond to this. How are you supposed to know if God is a good standard or not if you have no basis in logic?
What do you mean by good?
If it's objective,
moral
what do you mean by good?
Moral perfection is the definition of good.
How do you know that God is morally perfected?
I can read His word.
Anyone can say they're morally perfect. I can say right now.
It's self-revelatory.
I can read His word, and my consciousness tells me so.
But other people say that about different gods. So why do I have a different conscience than you?
Other gods fall short when it gets down to the attributes and characteristics.
The only thing that separates you and me is grace.
So one way to
why was I not graced?
Because God determines to allow you to have what you want or to give you grace.
Yeah, because you don't want Him. This is the divine hiddenness. This is the divine hiddenness.
You don't want grace,
non-resistant, non-believer argument.
Can you repeat that, Brenda?
We've sort of segued into the divine hiddenness argument, which is non-resistant non-believers, right? Which is a usually put in against Calvinists.
Yeah, so
Taylor
brought that up.
I would love some grace if anyone's got it.
God has it. All you got to do is just ask Him.
I already did. Never got any response.
So Brenda,
I don't believe you actually knew Christ.
Brenda,
otherwise you wouldn't be saying
this. Really
this.
bad at communicating that message, apparently.
No, it's because you don't really do much research outside of the Catholic school you went to.
You don't know what research Taylor has done. I mean, you're being.
You guys have been demonstrating it all night. You guys have been demonstrating it all night.
We've brought up a number of verses, and we've cited, where they're coming from. We've, to say that we don't know what we're talking about is just, it's plain rude. I mean, we can disagree about the interpretation because we, are actually people who think and we judge things, whether you want to believe it or not. But the Bible is contradictory. So you really, you're the one interpreting. I do actually. I know what
it's
the
actually
word contradiction
tautology. You know that? Did you know the word contradiction in philosophical terms denotes a tautology? Are you even prepared?
No, that's wrong. That's another big word you're trying to use, and you don't understand.
Brandon. Don't tell me when I'm always wrong when it's like you just tried to say this.
Contradiction is not a tautology.
It is though.
No, it's not. A equals A is a tautology.
You want me to give you the citations for it? I mean,
A equals A is a tautology, right?
hold on. I'm going to give you the citations for this.
I don't need citations because I actually know what I'm talking about.
No, obviously you don't, though.
A equals A is a tautology.
Yeah, so what you guys may not know that,
equals not A is a contradiction.
so what you guys may not know,
two
Brenda and
different
I,
things.
A
Two different
tautology
things.
is the same thing.
No, they're not the same.
Yes, they are. One's a negative and one's a positive. Yes, they are.
Are negative and positive the same?
One's a positive. One's a
Are
positive
negative and positive the
epistemology. One's a
same?
negative epistemology.
Is 1 equal to -1?
Oh my gosh!
Is
I have to
it?
get all these citations.
Isn't 1 equal to -1? Is it?
No, that's a
no, it's not. Is it?
But that's true in every world, though. That is a tautology.
What? No, that's a contradiction. 1 equals 1 is a tautology.
Right, but that's what I'm saying.
No, you're not. You're saying they're the same.
It's true in every world. It's true that it's false in every world. That's what I'm trying to say. It's a tautology.
That's
a tautology is saying the same thing twice in different words.
No, a tautology means that it's true in every world. It's an absolute truth. That's not what a
tautology means.
It does, because I even did a stream on it for 3 hours.
So how is tautology the same, a synonym of contradiction? They would be antonyms.
One at a time. I think we're devolving here into a
I think so.
Argument. Like we're just arguing. So like what my thing is with this channel, Converse Contender, is just like conversation contenders. Like I like people to come in and contend for what they believe, but I don't want to get to the point where people are just arguing to keep their point of view. Like everybody at the base, I think, has like what they believe. And a lot of times when you get into arguments about things, people like to stick to what they believe. In fact, studies have shown like if you confront somebody with beliefs that contradict theirs, they cling tighter to their beliefs a lot of times. But what I like to do is try to pry underneath and say, look, here's something you may be missing. And as most people that's been on my channel know, one of my favorite things is when somebody scratches their head and goes, I haven't thought about that. Or like if somebody tells me something and I go, I had never heard of that. So like I'm interested in conversations and like I don't want to just devolve into argument. And so that's why I said early on, I don't want this to turn into like us versus them like kind of thing. I'd rather have a conversation. And so is there any other points that Taylor, you and Katie would like to make before we take off here in a few minutes?
Well, I would just like to say that, again, I don't think it's been addressed that you need to be able to have logic and reasoning in order to even come to the conclusion that God is real or God is good or his moral system is true or good.
That's a presupposition, though.
Or else you have no reason to believe it.
So, okay, well, let's use an example. Let's say that I didn't use my logic and reason, right? And I were to just something was to be revealed to me. And I could either logically try to dissect it and say, wait a second, is this true? And try to break it all down. Or I could say, based on what I know, I'm going to accept this. And in that, you wouldn't necessarily, I think what you're trying to say is you necessarily need laws of logic. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying you need reasoning in order to give me a reason.
Well, I agree with that. That's a tautology right there. Like, you need reason for reason. I mean,
so Brent, I'm going to put this into the chat for you. Okay, this shows that a contradiction is a tautology. I'm going to give you the paper.
All right, so you guys can have that discussion. In fact, if you guys want to debate some of those things, we'll have you on my channel. In fact, some of you guys may not know, Brenda and I had a long discussion on a lot of these topics a little while back, and we actually had a really good talk. There wasn't any.
I just get a little bit agitated when people say things that are just flat out wrong, and they don't know what they're talking about. But they have that Dunning-Kruger belief that they know what they're talking about when they don't.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I get the same way. I don't.
A tautology and a contradiction are two very different statements within logic.
Well,
My citation.
he put a citation in the chat there. You guys can discuss that. But yeah. So Taylor, though. So your point about laws of logic, does that apply to yourself? So you can't, like, for example, it seemed like you agreed with me that objectivity is independent of human thought or reason. But then it seemed like you said you need reason to come to that conclusion.
I would say that it's something that's independent, like Brenda said, independent of any mind, not just human minds.
Okay. But then you said to locate or to come about one of these things, we can come about them through human reason.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah, you can
praise
reason to things that are true independent of your mind.
Do you have a actual?
Hang on a second.
Do you have an actual link to that paper? Because that's a $43 paper. Have you read it?
Yeah.
Have you read it?
Yes,
do you have the actual paper? Because the link is a $43 paper.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna. If you want, I could put it on MediaFire and send it to your email.
Yeah. Shoot it over to the email. All right. Go ahead, Taylor. I'm sorry. What was that?
Do you want the email?
I'll take that link as well.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
While we're sending things around.
Does anyone else want that?
Taylor, what was your point? What was your point about that it's independent of mind? Objectivity is independent of mind, but we can come about objective morals by what means?
We can come to understand things that are independent, that are true, independent of our minds through reasoning and logic, and we cannot do that using just faith.
So we can come about things that are independent of our minds by using our minds.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, you can look at Mount Everest, for the example. You can measure it using our minds, but it's still true, objectively independent of what our minds are measuring or thinking about.
Okay, so let's
still
apply that.
Many feet tall, regardless of if we know it or not. But we use our reason to figure it out.
We can't. Our minds can't do anything without our minds.
So here's what I'm asking: is when we get to morality. Okay, so here's what I'm asking: when we get to morality, an example like saving someone from dying. Now I'm saying it's objectively true that we should save someone, and I'm saying, how do we know that? Is it based on what we think about it, or is there some other way we can tell?
Well, based on a system of how we behave, we can choose systems that are clearly untrue because they contradict themselves and contradict reality, or we can create systems that are consistent with reality and consistent with themselves. And I've described where I believe the ought comes from, and that's, first of all, you have an ought when you're using logic to be valid with your logic, and secondly, our ought to maximize the good states of existence comes from the fact that the universe itself ought to exist.
So Taylor, we're the ones who are constructing these concepts and models?
No, these concepts exist independently of our minds.
Can you justify that ought, though?
Sorry?
Can you justify that ought? Because it's just saying something is ought to be doesn't make it true. It could be just a illusion in your brain or something that's a figment of your imagination.
Well, I can justify that because the mere fact that something exists means that something should exist because...
Well, then I can say something about God. What's the difference between me saying God is necessarily exists and what you're saying?
Because you don't have any proof that God exists. Yeah. I know I exist, unless you're arguing
proof. What do you think Taylor's saying, though?
Proof requires
the same.
Unless your philosophy is
line of reasoning.
Like if you think you're in the Matrix, then I think we can all work from the assumption that we exist.
Even in the Matrix, all this logic.
You still need justification for that, though.
Proof requires a justification, a standard, or a basis that you can say we know where this comes from or how this, not just how this works, but where it comes from.
Yeah, so
So
the fact that nothingness is logically incoherent means that something is by definition ought to exist.
Messenger, did you want to add something?
No, I'm good right now.
Okay.
I just wanted to know.
Doesn't necessarily exist, though. It's contingent, especially in the mathematical level. The universe had a beginning, so it is contingent.
I just want to know how information like abstract laws of logic exist outside of your own mind in this universe.
They don't.
They don't. So you can't apply them to the universe.
Of course you can.
How can you apply something that doesn't exist outside of your mind to the universe?
Well, you can use it to describe the universe.
Yeah.
That's I'm talking about like
the law describes it.
It's universally applicable.
I'm talking about being able to type into information into a machine that allows us to be able to do what we're doing right now and have a screen with a picture on it.
Yeah, you want to know how computers work?
No, I'm saying the fact that we're able to do such things with materials in the universe and be able to produce radio waves sending information that actually describes something or prescribes something is proof itself that there's something transcendent or something abstract immaterial that exists.
How does the fact that we can do things with matter prove that God exists?
Because we're using immaterial things like laws of logic.
No, we're not.
Radio waves are material.
What is the law of logic?
I can make a campfire and use it to make smoke signals and send information to somebody in their teepee far away. That doesn't mean that God exists.
But you're using information that already exists.
No, it doesn't.
The DNA and the numbers in the universe that we're able to apply to the universe don't exist.
I'm not using DNA when I use smoke signals. What are you talking about?
No, I'm saying DNA is information, and so is
so are smoke signals. So are smoke signals.
Numbers.
Smoke signals are information.
Yes,
did the universe determine you to do that smoke signal, or did you choose that in your own autonomy?
Can you focus on the topic, which is apparently?
Well, no, it's key.
No, it's not, because Colin is confused about the ontology of information.
No, I want to know how you're able to use abstract universal laws of logic that don't exist outside of your mind and apply them to materialistic objects that aren't uniform to those laws of logic that are abstract.
That necessitates a God.
Do they exist in my mind?
Sorry, can I interrupt for a second? I gotta go to bed. I got work in the morning. Thank you all.
All right,
Katie.
Katie.
Conversation.
Colin.
Yes.
Good night.
Colin, do these ideas, numbers, and ideas exist in my mind?
Everything exists in your mind.
Yes, anything exists inside your mind, but they're immaterial.
So, well, no, they're physical.
Your consciousness is physical?
Yeah, it's in my mind.
Consciousness is a term of unknown origin that replicates what chemical and electrical impulses are going on within the brain. Because people can't recreate this or replicate, quote, consciousness, because they don't have enough understanding of the chemicals and electrons, don't mean that they don't originate from.
Wait a second, Messenger.
Consciousness means to be with knowledge.
The brain is reducible. Consciousness is not reducible.
Wait a second. I was about to say, Messenger, are you saying that's all consciousness is, like, as in a matter of fact?
I'm saying that if I stick an ice pick through your brain, your level of consciousness changes because I impacted the material structure of your brain.
I think my brain. Wait a second. My brain activity changes. How do you know?
Well,
that
we can literally remove memories
because you're assuming. That, hold on a second. When you're coming from a neurological standpoint, which means the essence and energy and nature for which we exist and process information and declare those things through our voices, are material in their nature. Just because we use a term like consciousness, which describes the I think for therefore I am type concept from Rene Descartes, does not mean it's still not derived itself from chemical and electrical processes.
Yeah.
Wait a second.
Consciousness means to be with knowledge.
Colin, hang on a second. Let's let Messenger finish. But I do think that you're
not going to have much knowledge.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. I've heard. Yeah, so I'm familiar with this.
Idealists such as Johanna Rods and several others. I'm experienced with this.
Yeah. So here's the other thing I would point is that if I have a radio and I were to just like break the antenna, I wouldn't get the signal. But that doesn't mean that there's something wrong, like there's something up with the signal. That means there's something wrong with the antenna or the radio. So in the same way,
you're talking about something because you're talking about the radio waves exist in the air regardless if you have a receptor.
That's the consciousness.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's not the consciousness because if you really want to talk about human beings and relating them to something material, it'd be better to use a computer than a radio.
Well, it would be better for your example.
No. From remember my studies and my credentials are in psychology, which is based on what human.
But that's why I ask you.
So what I'm trying to say is like you're absolutely right in terms of if I speak to you and you don't have the ability to hear, okay, it doesn't mean that I'm not producing information for you to be able to receive. It just means that you have an inability to receive it. But if I wrote it down, if I sit there and gave it in some other type of form or medium, then you could receive that information.
So here's the thing is you define consciousness in totally materialistic terms. Can you define that again? And then go ahead.
We know that the way that we experience life here on Earth, and I cannot speak to a potential afterlife.
But define what you define as consciousness.
Our consciousness is derived based on chemical and electrical reactions and formulations within our physical brain.
And do you know that that's all it is, or is that just like are you claiming that, or are you saying that's part of it, or are you saying that's it? Because there could be more to it, obviously, right? That you're unaware of.
But we don't. Again, I can't speak to an afterlife that I haven't experienced yet.
Well, not an afterlife. I'm saying in this life. I'm saying could there be more to consciousness than just material?
I don't think there's more to it in terms of that, because we have our dreams, and dreams are amazing constructs of our reality. We have obscure dreams. We have dreams that are based on desires and wants. We have dreams that are based on fears and losses and worries. We have all these things that our brain formulates and works out in our sleep so that we can reset and our brain isn't constantly stuck in terms of anxiety and depression and anger and stress. That's the whole purpose of dreams, is to undo what the conscious mind is doing in a subconscious way during dreaming. So when you're sitting there talking about these impulses, whether they be chemical in their nature or electrical in their nature, they're still physical and material in their nature while we're here.
Wait a second, because I think we might be equivocating on the term consciousness.
Yeah, wait a minute.
Because you said conscious as
but consciousness is you're starting to get into things of an abstract.
I just mean something like self-awareness. You were using it as in the antecedent to self.
Can I ask a question after this to Messenger?
Yeah, sure.
Your self-awareness comes in your prefrontal cortex. That's where your experiential and episodic memories are. So what
about people who are completely brain dead who have experiences?
Well, they have experiences, but how do they process those experiences from a cognitive standpoint? They can't do it without access to the prefrontal cortex in a healthy way. No difference if somebody was, either slightly or severely mentally handicapped.
So that was my whole point about the radio, is people who are brain dead who still have conscious experience. It's like the radio signal.
You said brain dead. What do you mean that they still have experience?
Well, whenever they're so someone who's brain dead, who they brought back, has said, I had an experience during this whole time. And they said, no, you were clinically brain dead during this whole time. And so I don't remember the guy who wrote, there's a scholar who just wrote a pretty good book on this. I don't have the reference on me, but I will email it to you, Messenger. But I would just say that's kind of like, I would just say that that's probably a self-defeater for that.
Well, at the same time, if you went and experienced a chemical called
DMT, sure,
which your brain produces in small amounts during sleep, but it produces high amounts in either close to death or death experiences, Or if you take the chemical of DMT, enhances it in a non-life-threatening way over a 15 to 30-minute period, you would have those same experiences that you're describing for somebody who is in a potentially comatose state.
Yeah, but
DMT you're just describing though wouldn't.
Go ahead, Praise. Go ahead, Praise.
Yeah, my question to Messenger is: can you demonstrate something that is material or physical objectively exists?
Well, I mean, no, I don't. Well, yes, you can from an objective standpoint, from what we understand about psychology, understanding biological, cognitive experience, and emotional processes. I believe that you can articulate those inner determinants of those processes in an objective way. At the same time, you can have a subjective interpretation of what they mean and their value that they hold to.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Well, my point is, in physics especially, there's nothing in reality that is proven to be objectively material or physical. So that's my point on that.
That's not true.
It is true because there's so many.
True.
It is
then
true.
Back it up. Then back it up. You're just spouting nonsense again.
The double slit experiment. It goes on and on. The point is that you
don't understand. Are you? What level of quantum?
Do you want me to
mechanics?
give you the citations after citations, Brendan?
I
just keep giving them to you, and you keep on telling me I don't know what I don't know.
Yes.
Brenda.
You know. Holy crap!
Okay.
Who's making all that noise?
Whoever's typing needs to mute real quick. Brenda, try to avoid like terms like nonsense, and rather just ask clarifying questions of
right.
Can you, no. Okay. You too, Praise. Like, can you substantiate what you're asserting? Can you give me more information that I may be missing that would help me understand where you're coming from? And I think if we would present it that way, it avoids a lot of the emotionally charged responses.
Right.
What level of quantum mechanics are you? You third year calc?
I don't. That's an appeal to an authority or appeal to have.
If you don't understand the calculus and the physics, you don't know what you're talking about.
Do you understand?
You don't need to know that. You don't need to know that to have a basic understanding, an elementary understanding. Well, here's your citation, Brenda. I'm putting it in the YouTube for you. There you go.
Praise, hold on. Brenda, what's your level of credentials and where are you coming from when it comes to quantum mechanics or the double slit experiment?
It's not terribly hard to understand. The double slit experiment shows that.
You asked Praise if he had credentials, so I'm saying, do you have credentials in the same manner?
I'm not making pronouncements about the double slit.
You did, though. You said that I don't understand something.
Yeah, I'm not the one claiming that it shows some kind of material or immaterial reality. That's quantum woo. It's easily debunked.
But it's not. I just put a citation there.
That's not a citation. You linked me to a popular science magazine.
No, it's livescience.com. That's not legitimate, reputable science.
It's not a paper. It's not a paper.
I'll put a journal for you then, for gosh sake.
I don't know. Why don't you just explain what it is about explain to me what it is about the double slit experiment that you think proves what do you think it proves?
Okay, if you want me to give explanation, I will. I just need the time to do it, but I don't know if it's going to take over the time. I don't know how much Converse has.
It's really simple, actually. It's not very hard.
Well, it's not as simple as what you're making it, because even they are still baffled.
I'll explain it if I have time to explain it, but I need the time.
Well, what is
all right, you guys. I'm sorry, I stepped away for a few minutes. You sound like it kind of evolved into a big discussion there. What I want to do is, I do need to wrap up, but I'd like to go around and give everybody just like one more chance to speak and just kind of give their thoughts of the discussion tonight, because although at times it did get heated, I think that everybody kind of learned something from this. And whether you had never heard an argument before or something like that, whether you believe that it's true or not, but maybe it gave you another idea. I always say this about books, like that. Like, I can buy a book and get so much from one page, like more than reading the rest of the book. Sometimes it's just one idea that can, lend you this new perspective. So if you want, we can start with Brenda and move around, or we can start with Messenger, either way, and move around, and everybody kind of give, like, Like, if you have anything else to add to the conversation before we go.
I don't really have anything to add. I didn't learn anything from here.
No, you didn't.
No, because there's nothing. There was nobody here that is able to. So, good discussion. I'm sorry I get heated, but I have very low tolerance for Dunning-Krugers.
Yeah, you should be more tolerant.
I don't think I need to be.